From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Gulf Coast studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the Junior. It's very important. Remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you are watching us on YouTube by now, you know the drill. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. Also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. And as we always say, please stay here. There's a lot of stuff here. Pre-game shows, post-game shows, podcasts, draft shows, NBA games, you name it, we got it on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. I'm glad you have found us here. One of the more original bits of programming on this wonderful network we started a few months back. All right, Andre, Friday in the city of New Orleans. Starting to feel pieces of fall outside in New Orleans. It's still hot enough to be hot, but every now and then you get that little breath, that little touch of fall, as they call it. It's always a good time of year. Hope you're enjoying it. I am leaving tomorrow morning to head up to Chicago, Saints versus Bears. I checked the weather. Sunday, highs in the mid-50s, lows in the 40s. It's supposed to be rainy in the morning. I don't know if it's going to rain into the afternoon. But one thing I know, I've been to Soldier Field a few times now. It always seems to be a little slick up there because it's just damp. And the grass is always long. Every time I've gone up there, the grass is always long. First game the Saints will play in a grass stadium this year. So we're going to get into that. Saints, Bears, so many storylines. I mean, so many storylines. We're going to talk about the two big ones today. But first things first, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know, for many, the week is ending on this Friday, but in sports, it's really just beginning. You know, you got high school football tonight, LSU, Vanderbilt, Tulane, Army going down on Saturday, along with the Southeasterns, the Nickels, all of the teams out there. And then Sunday, you got Saints, you got Bears, and a game that has a lot of layers to it, Sean. A whole lot of layers. You can start talking about the quarterback battle between Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams. Not the first time those two have had a quarterback battle. Last time was at Oklahoma when Spencer Rattler was the starter. Caleb Williams comes in as a young, bright-eyed quarterback and eventually takes Spencer Rattler's job. The other layer is their defensive coordinator. Bears DC, you know the name, Dennis Allen, former Saints head coach, former Saints DC. So you've got Dennis Allen taking on his former team in the Saints. You've got Spencer Rattler taking on the quarterback that once took his job in college. Spencer Rattler winds up going to South Carolina. Caleb Williams stays at Oklahoma for a while, follows the head coach to USC, wins the Heisman, #1 overall pick. So looking at those two situations, Sean, who is this a bigger revenge game for? Spencer Rattler getting a shot at Caleb Williams or Dennis Allen getting a shot at his old team?
It's a great way to put it. It's interesting because neither one of them are going to admit it out front. I wasn't in Chicago, but I saw some of the clips. DA downplayed it, of course. Caleb Williams was fairly short with his answers about the situation, including when he was asked, do you have a friendship or do you get along or do you still, are you still buddies with the guy you once shared a quarterback room, Caleb Williams? It was very quick with his answer, but I want you to hear it. Go ahead.
Do you have like a friendship relationship with Caleb, or it's just kind of curious?
Cordial, I'll say what's up to him at the game, but I got respect for him, good player. Okay,
Andre.
Yeah.
I was there. You could tell he knew the questions were coming. That was a very direct, short, succinct answer. I think this is personal for Spencer Rattler. I really think this is personal for Spencer Rattler. And by the time Rattler got to the Saints, he had already had 2 years of South Carolina. He had already, so by the time he got here, the Oklahoma experience felt like a really long time ago. And in some ways it was, but in some ways it wasn't. And I know for Rattler, he's obviously moved on and he's getting an opportunity here. But when you come face to face with that storyline like he is this week, I'm sure it brings back some old memories. And I had to refresh my memory on this because I remember it, but it was 2021. Ed Ogeron was on his way out in Baton Rouge. There was a lot of turmoil there. It was one of those where you kind of paid attention to him on the periphery a little bit, but it really didn't affect us down here. So I went back and just refreshed this. Okay, it was Spencer Rattler's third season. He was coming off of a very good season. Going into that year, he was a Heisman hopeful.
Yep.
He was his third year starting, and it certainly felt like the plan was going to be Spencer Rattler, third year starts. You know, you work Caleb Williams in spots, and all of a sudden he becomes the guy in year 2, year 3, and so on and so forth we go. But that's not what happened. And, you know, when I really peeled back the layers on this, I'm sure Oklahoma fans don't feel this way, but just as a neutral observer, they kind of did Rattler dirty. I mean, they kind of did him dirty, especially with, like I said, he was coming off, it was his second year starting. He was a Heisman hopeful. They were 5-0. 5-0 when they pulled the plug. It was mid-game during the Red River rivalry. They were down by, 21 points or something. It was mid-game in the second quarter. They pulled Rattler, put Caleb in, and they rallied. They won some crazy shootout, and from that point on, it was Caleb Williams' show. But at that point, Spencer Rattler was completing 75% of his passes. They had a 5-0 record. There's that video from the West Virginia game, because in the midst of that 5-game start, remember, Tulane almost beat them to start the season that year. Michael Pratt almost outdueled Spencer Rattler, and they ended up winning that game by like 5. So that kind of got people a little, I guess, cooled off on Spencer Rattler, and he just never quite recovered. But in the West Virginia game, they won like 16-13, 16-14. The students are chanting, "We want Caleb, we want Caleb." I mean, I had to go back and refresh my memory there. So it was something where, you know, the plan for him was he was a high-ranking high school recruit. He goes to Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, a quarterback guru, gets in, and then by year 3, he's a returning starter, and, you know, he's going to have a great season, be a first-round pick, and go into the NFL in, the 2022 season. That is not at all what happened. And when you look at the circumstances, I'm sure in the Rattler camp, it's like, whoa. Yeah, we're not perfect, but we're still winning games. And it kind of feels like, to me, just on the surface, when you watch it, looking back from a few years away, that was a risky move by Lincoln Riley, especially since later in that season, I didn't realize this, they were playing bad against Baylor. They had to pull Caleb and put Rattler back in. So it was a crazy set of circumstances. If he doesn't get benched, like I said, probably finishes out that season, probably has great stats with Lincoln Riley, probably is a first-round pick, and he's probably on year 3 or 4 in the NFL right now. It's just crazy how it all worked out, and he ends up at South Carolina. I think the experience, you know, he's coming off the heels of the QB1 thing, where he didn't come off great as a high school senior. I think that experience he learned a little bit from, but I think the benching is probably what made him kind of what he's at now, where you'd have never known he did a QB1. He's very careful with his words. It's humbled him. It's motivated him. And it's it knocked him back down a little bit, because at one point he was the Caleb Williams. He was the top prospect coming out and going to Oklahoma. But in the grand scheme of things, none of that matters now. They meet on the field Sunday. I think Spencer Rattler is going to be incredibly motivated. I just hope he harnesses that motivation the right way and doesn't try to do too much. On the flip side, Dennis Allen, I don't think it's his... He spent 15 years here. He got fired. He got shown the door. They don't normally fire coaches mid-season here, but it happened. It almost feels a little like nostalgic with him, as opposed to, I got to get even with the team that let me go. And just listen to some of his comments. He spent a lot of time here. He was a family guy. 15 years is an eternity in the coaching profession, because he went from assistant coach to leaving, to coming back, the coordinator, to eventually becoming the head coach before he was ultimately fired. So I think there's a lot of motivation for him. I don't think there's quite as much personal motivation for him as there is for Spencer Rattler. But here is the thing. While I believe that to be the truth, I also think, because remember, DA drafted Spencer Rattler, which means they spent months studying Spencer Rattler. And they've spent months since last year, and obviously, studying for this game. I think DA knows Rattler a lot better than Rattler knows DA. And I think while the motivation, just personal motivation, may be higher with Rattler, I think the advantage may actually be DA, because I think he knows the Saints roster inside and out. In particular, he knows this young quarterback inside and out. So I think it's going to be a fascinating matchup. But who is it a bigger revenge game for? I got to think it's a little bit more for Rattler than DA. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with DA since that was the last thing you said. I don't think the vitriol is there from Dennis Allen to the Saints, because when you look at it, the Saints didn't wrong Dennis Allen.
Yeah.
Dennis Allen was 18-25 as a Saints head coach. A lot of fans would probably tell you he stayed Saints head coach a little longer than they would have liked. The Saints gave him a lot of leeway, even when the team wasn't winning, when the team wasn't making the playoffs. And once again, when Dennis Allen got the head coach job, he took over from a playoff caliber team. When he got it, they weren't a playoff caliber team when he had it, you know. But to his credit, he revitalized his career here. He breathed life into a defense that was historically bad. A few years later, under Dennis Allen, this defense was the strength of the squad, you know. He's seen as a defensive genius. I was looking at some, comments and what people in the Bears community were talking. They love Dennis Allen out there in that defensive coordinator role. You know, and after the game, we heard that soundbite from Spencer where he said, I'll shake his hand, we're cordial. You think it'll be cordial? Dennis Allen's going to be laughing with Cam Jordan. He's going to be dapping up to Mario Davis. Alontae Taylor talked in the Saints locker room today, and he said, Dennis Allen drafted me. Like, I love DA. Pete Werner, like, these guys like DA, especially on the defensive side. Dennis Allen is going to be all smiles after the game. Obviously, as a competitor, you do want to beat the team that fired you, but I don't think it's that vitriol, that motivation in the same sense it is with Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams. I read a book called The Greatest Estate Developer, where one guy essentially stole another's life and went on to live all of his dreams, and the other guy had to watch from the outside looking in. And it reminds me of this. Caleb essentially stole Spencer's life. I mean, you look at the life that Caleb went on to lead. High school phenom, 5-star. That was Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler was supposed to be a Heisman winner. Spencer Rattler was supposed to be the #1 overall pick of the draft. That's how people were talking about him in his younger years at Oklahoma. Spencer Rattler was supposed to get drafted into the NFL at a high-powered offense and a coach that was going to invest in him and believe in him. He was the Lincoln Riley guy, the guy who develops quarterbacks.
The next one, right.
But Caleb Williams, high school phenom, 5-star prospect, he's the one who wins the Heisman. He's the one who gets drafted #1 overall. Look at all the offensive talent they've invested into Caleb Williams. He's got DJ Moore. He's got Rome Odunze. They drafted him Luther Burden. They spent the first-round pick on Colston Loveland. They went out and got the #1 offensive mind that was available last year in Ben Johnson as the head coach. He's got the high-powered offense. And Lincoln Riley left and went to USC and said, I'm taking Caleb Williams with me. Everything that Spencer Rattler was expected to accomplish in his early years heading into college, Caleb Williams wound up living that life. And Spencer Rattler wound up going to South Carolina, who isn't exactly a football power. He gets drafted in the 5th round. He's an afterthought when you look at the top quarterbacks in that draft, like the Bo Nixes and the Caleb Williams and the Drake Mays, the Jaden Daniels. He's drafted way later in the 5th round, to where Caleb Williams is a franchise guy that this team is clearly building around. Spencer Rattler fighting for his life every week. We were talking about his backup 3 weeks ago, and if he loses on Sunday, we're probably going to be talking about his backup again next week, So just the difference in their career trajectories, two guys that were parallel at one point. One went left, one went right. They arrived at the same destination in the NFL. But right now we're seen as two quarterbacks at two different levels. So from Spencer Rattler's perspective, like you said, he'll never admit it, but it is human nature.
That's it, man.
You want to stick it to that guy because sometimes what you say is not as loud as what you don't say. Spencer Rattler could have said, me and Caleb, we have a big history. I haven't seen him in a while. I'm excited to see him, catch up. No, it ain't that. If it was that, he would have told us it was that. Like you said, we're cordial. I'll shake his hand after the game.
That's all it was.
That said a lot more than anything else he could have said. So yes, it is personal to Spencer Rattler. He wants to beat Caleb Williams. Yes, he's matured from that point. Yes, he's moved on. No, I don't think he's haunted by what happened at Oklahoma, because ultimately he made it to the league. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL. But do I think there's a little more motivation for him to stick it to that guy than it is for Dennis Allen to stick it to a team that probably still loves him in a city that didn't really wrong him, or an organization in Mickey Loomis that had more faith in him than he probably should have at times? I'm going to lean this being a bigger revenge game for Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, it's interesting that you laid it out like that, because it's so true. I mean, I remember the recruiting of Caleb Williams, and obviously everyone remembers Spencer Rattler coming out because of, what was it, QB1 or whatever it was called?
Yeah.
But when it was, because LSU was really hard on Caleb. They wanted Caleb Williams bad. I mean, that was the year, I think Joe Brady was there recruiting him, because maybe not Caleb Williams, maybe not Joe Brady, but I know LSU wanted him. It was always going to be difficult to get him because Lincoln Riley had that reputation, and that's where he was going to go. And then, if you recall, LSU tried as hard as they possibly. Lincoln Riley was LSU's top target that year before they got Brian Kelly. And then remember, there was that crazy reports coming out that after the game of the Big 12 championship or whatever it was, he was gonna leave and go to LSU. Well, he left Oklahoma after the game, but he went to the opposite coast. He went to the West Coast and went to USC and took Caleb Williams with him. And you're right. I keep thinking this because when you go back and look at the numbers, and you go back and look at the fact they were having success, and this guy was a Heisman hopeful coming into the season, to be benched before they even lost a game. A, very risky for a true freshman.
Yeah.
But B, I mean, it totally threw Spencer Rattler's timeline all off. And for all intents and purposes, kind of feels like we said a lot with Spencer Rattler, wasn't playing all that bad, at least to warrant that benching at that point. It feels like we kind of say that a lot now.
Yeah.
But he has to go to South Carolina in a place obviously not on the same level as Oklahoma, has to fight to regain his sort of reputation and get himself back. And look, he did some good things at South Carolina, did really well in the pre-draft circuit, really well at the Senior Bowl, but then slipped to the 5th round. Meanwhile, Caleb Williams was #1 overall pick. He was the can't-miss prospect, couldn't do anything wrong, and goes to USC, wins the Heisman, #1 overall pick, while Spencer Rattler's really having to scrap for everything that he earns. I mean, yeah, man, there's a lot there. And when you really look at it, if you just look at it objectively, it kind of did him wrong up at Oklahoma. Lincoln he had to do what he had to do. It was best interest of his team, but they didn't go undefeated. They didn't win all their games with Caleb. So I think there's going to be a lot of I'm very curious to see Spencer Rattler's body language in this game, because he's kind of stoic. He didn't actually say a lot when we asked him about Caleb Williams. He did go on a little bit of like, hey, got me to South Carolina. I'm not the first quarterback to go through this. But I remember when Drew was here, the first time he went back and played Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
He elaborated a lot more. Remember, because obviously they chose Phillip Rivers over him.
Right.
He elaborated to us a lot more about, hey, look, it didn't have to be hostile with me and Phillip Rivers. The situation was tough, but we got along. We were professionals, this and that. I still talk to him. He talked a lot more than Spencer talked about Caleb Williams just there. So just something to keep in mind. I think it's personal for Spencer, but you gotta harness that the right way. You cannot press. You cannot press, because when that happens, you can usually see it a mile away when it comes to body language. So we'll see who ends up with who ends up having the biggest motivation. I will say this. I guarantee this, and it'll be posted online. Whoever wins, if the Saints win, Spencer Rattler's getting that game ball, and it's going to be posted.
Oh, yeah.
If the Bears win, Dennis Allen's getting that game ball, and it's going to be posted. This is something to keep in mind when the Saints play the Bears on Sunday.
Yeah, and one interesting thing that you said is the fact that Dennis Allen might know Spencer Rattler better than any other coach in the league. I mean, Dennis Allen is a guy who, like you said, drafted him. There was a lot of research that went into Spencer Rattler. And looking at the numbers, the rate that Spencer Rattler was blitzed at last year, he was one of the most blitzed quarterbacks in the league during the starts he had last year. You go to this year, he's actually one of the least blitzed quarterbacks in the league. That blitz was getting to him last year. Teams haven't gone with the blitz this year, mainly probably because he's getting the ball out so quick. But I'm sure Dennis Allen knows, hey, if I can pressure that guy, I've seen him make those mistakes. I'm sure Dennis Allen knows certain, tendencies that Spencer Rattler has that maybe Spencer Rattler isn't even.
Well, it's been kind of hidden for a while because
exactly.
It's a fresh start. And look, I watched all 22 of Chicago-Washington last night. He blitzed the heck out of Jaden Daniels. Now, Jaden was not 100%, you could tell, with his knee, but D.A. was sending that extra guy, dang near every single pass attempt. So I think that's coming. But, and this is a defense that obviously takes the ball away, but if you got a team that blitzes a lot and you got a team that takes the ball away, that means they're willing to take some chances, which means they can leave themselves vulnerable to big plays. So I look for that to be something hopefully Rattler can exploit. We had other stuff to talk about this week because honestly, trade talks are heating up. There was a report on Sunday about Alvin Kamara telling Mickey Loomis he doesn't want to get traded. We did the pod on Wednesday about Olave, why we would do a deal. But Alvin talked this week and clarified things in the only way Alvin could.
Yeah.
So why don't we check that out? Listen to Alvin Kamara on the idea of potentially getting traded.
And at the end of the day, it's business, so, I don't go upstairs and I don't have an office upstairs. Yeah. I got an office in Charlotte at NASCAR, but I don't got an office upstairs, so I don't really sit in those meetings and I don't really know what happens up there. I just got to, keep my head down and, I don't know. If I was a GM, I guess I would go to the player and be like, hey, we trading you, just so you know. So if Mickey come downstairs and say that, then I'm going to go drink a pina colada somewhere.
Ain't nothing wrong with pina colada, Sean.
No, I love me a good pina colada by the pool.
Right. So Alvin Kamara making it very clear that he doesn't, and once again, this is something he's done in the past. He doesn't want to play anywhere but here. And as a fan, you got to love that. You got to love a player that he was here. I don't want to say at the height because he wasn't here when they won the Super Bowl, but Alvin Kamara was here for a lot of good times, a lot of highs. And now during the lows, he's 30. He could be chasing a championship somewhere, but he wants to turn it around here. That means something to him. He made it very clear, Sean. Does that kind of change how the Saints go about things?
I don't think he was on the block. I'm sure teams have called for him. That's different than the Saints reaching out to teams about certain players. I think there might have been interest from other teams interested in him, but it sure doesn't sound like Alvin's going to show up wherever he gets traded. If he's traded, he's deucing. He's going to sip on a pina colada in Mexico somewhere or something. I don't know, going to take a nice vacation, go hang out by the pool or something, because it doesn't sound like he wants to suit up for anyone but black and gold. And that's so him. He is such his own person. He's a little bit of a mystery at times. Sometimes you can't really tell what he's thinking, but I think he just he let us all in with that soundbite in terms of what he thinks about the potential of playing elsewhere. He don't want to do it, and if he's forced to do it, he just won't do it. So I would imagine teams, the phone calls will be less and less as the weeks go on with Alvin Kamara. So it's a good thing. Hopefully, he can get back on track. I think the run game is something that they could hopefully bounce back from this week because the Bears are bad in the rush defense. Yeah. And it's going to be a grass field. It could be wet. They may need to turn to the run game to get some things going. So we'll see what he can do. I think the run game has been a disappointment, and I think it's twofold. I think it has been offensive line at times, but I also think the backs haven't played as well as they could have played. So hopefully they can get back on track and get a win this week. And look, I know matchup-wise, I know, 5.5-point favorite right now, the Bears. So I think the Bears are favorite, and Bears are expected to win. But I think this is a very winnable game for the Saints because you're catching them on a short week. There are some inner motivations. From a matchup standpoint, perhaps you do some things well that they do poorly. And they've got history, much like the Giants. They have a very good history with the Bears. They've won 8 or 9 straight.
The Bears haven't beaten the Saints since 2008.
It's been a long time. Remember, it was a Thursday night game. It has been a long time since the Saints have lost the Chicago Bears. We're going to knock on wood right here.
Yep. It's downhill.
So we'll see. And also this, let me read this off real quick. This is as healthy as your Saints have been in a long time, my friend. And this is why, it's another reason why our level of critique is what it is, because they have been healthy. Just only 2 questionable names, Isaac Yiadom and John Ridgeway. For the Bears, Grady Jackson is questionable. Santos is out. Noah Sewell's out. Booker, Travis Homer, DeAndre Swift are all questionable. Obviously, the big name there being DeAndre Swift, who had a great game last week. So Alvin wants to be here. I'm very curious to see when do the Saints decide, okay, it's been a great career, but we're gonna move on. But that day is not today, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I want to see this be a good game for the Saints because it seems like that Giants game kind of felt like a back against the wall type of game, and they stepped up. This feels like another one of those games for everybody. Spencer Rattler, if you go to Chicago and don't win that game, especially if you don't look good in that game, the talk that we were having 2-3 weeks ago about your backup quarterback, it's going to spark up and it'll be even louder at this point. Alvin Kamara, you've got Kendre Miller breathing down your neck, which I know you want. It's not like AK wants 30 touches a game. But people are starting to use that W word with Alvin Kamara, that washed word.
They are.
I think Alvin Kamara still has a little in the tank, and I'd like to see Kellen Moore get him involved differently on offense in the way that they use him in the receiving game. Like every time I watch Christian McCaffrey, I'm just like,
no, the blueprint has been
it's there.
Like it's
they
been there.
got the same skill set. Why, like, I don't get Chris Olave. A lot of talk about Chris Olave. We just spent 27 minutes talking about him on Wednesday. This would be a great time for a bounce back game. Jawan Johnson, same to him. Defense, Caleb Williams, one play, he can make a throw that you've never seen before, one of the most beautiful passes ever. And he might make the dumbest throw you've ever seen.
His
the
misses
very
are
next
bad,
snap.
man. He's got some of the worst misses you will ever see.
He has the level of confidence that he can make a play in every situation, and that hurts him a lot, and that can result in turnovers. Today, Alante Taylor said this could be another game where we get 5 turnovers and win the game.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams is going to put the ball in danger. Defense, you have to capitalize. Defensive line, you were all over Drake May when it came to pressuring him, but you only got him down one time. Caleb Williams is slippery. Getting to him is one thing. Getting him to that grass is another thing. So it seems like back against the wall, a lot to prove this week from everybody. Let's step up to the plate in a road environment and get it done.
And in the closing seconds here, I'll just say this. 2-5 looks so much better than 1-6. If they slip to 1-6, I think it all but ensures it shifts into future mode at that point.
Yeah.
It's time to look to the future and see what they have. So hopefully get the job done on Sunday. All right, we got to get out of here. Andre Johnson Jr., Sean Fazende. I'll be in the Windy City this weekend. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.